Hi guys, so my name is Keisha and it's the first time I've ever done anything like this, but I wanted to do it because I started a journey a few weeks ago, actually about a month or two ago, a new journey in my life. And I think it's important that people, if you haven't already done something like this, you need to get yourself into this process. So a few months ago, I was speaking to my father, and I had just had a situation where I needed someone to step in and kind of deal with a situation. It was a ticket that I got years ago that they were attempting to collect on an incident notice. So I was asking my father for some advice. But essentially he was saying, babe, you're beautiful, you're intelligent, all of this, but one of the things that's a deficiency for you is your finances. And my father knows that I want to get married eventually, and he said, you have all these key components, but your component, the kink in your armor, is your finances. And so I have been kind of thinking about that anyway. I'm a flight attendant with a major carrier, been there for 8-9 years, make a very decent living, and make 50-something thousand a year. I've never been married, don't have any children, don't have any responsibilities, and when I looked at it, I couldn't figure out where my money was going. Why is it I don't have savings? Why is it I don't have a 401k? What would happen if something happened to me right now? Essentially, I'm living, paycheck to paycheck, and that doesn't make any sense considering that I make a good decent amount of money. Well, where is it going to? It's going to several creditors, more creditors than I would like to count. There was, back taxes that I owe to the IRS, things like that. So my father had suggested you need a financial planner. You need someone to help get your financial life together. And it took me a few months. Honestly, it took me a few months because I just could not seem to work it through in my mind of having to involve somebody else in my finances. But essentially, my father was right when he said if you knew what to do, you'd be doing it, and this would not be an issue. So after a few months, I did hire a financial planning company, Battle & Company. They are based in Denver, Colorado. I live in Chicago, but of course, because I'm a flight attendant, it's easy for me to deal with a business that is not in the same city. And of course, how many of us deal with businesses in different cities? Anytime you have a credit card, 9 times out of 10, they're not in the same city or state that you're in. So found out about Battle & Company, and the process was interesting. First I had to write down every single creditor, every single bill, every single expense that I have every month. And I promise you that is one of the hardest parts, because you really get to see where you are financially. You're starting to see your net worth when you see you have 10, 14, 20, 30 creditors. Or you're putting down your expenses for the month, because essentially the survey, if you want to call it a survey, but it's kind of an information sheet, asks you for all your essential information. So you're writing down how much you spend on dry cleaning, how much you spend on food, how much you spend on eating out, your cable, your light bill. You're writing down all these things, and it takes a moment because you need to get the addresses, the correspondence. Eventually you'll need to get the interest from all of your creditors. And that's one of the next steps. And you got to write all this down. And if you have a lot of it, it's going to take a moment. But it kind of shows you where you are and puts in perspective what you're trying to do for your life. So when I spoke to Mr. Battle, it took me several weeks to get that done, because I got very frustrated at myself and was very embarrassed. I can't believe I'm here. I'm a graduate of a Big Ten university. How did I do this? And so essentially, once I finally got it into him, then comes the next step where he puts everything together. One of the things he asks you to do is to get all the interest. Write down the interest numbers, because he does an interest analysis to speak to you about. And when I saw that I was paying over $5,000, actually $5,500 in interest alone per year. Are you serious? $5,500, if I was saving $5,500, oh my gosh, I could go on a fabulous vacation every year. I can go on a fabulous vacation every few months because it's $5,500 in interest. That was the biggest revelation. And that kind of came in the second step. Once Mr. Battle sat down with me and we had a phone conference, because obviously they deal with people that are not in the same city. If you're in the same city, you would actually have a live meeting with him. But if you're not in the same city, you're going to have a phone conference. And he kind of broke down what the next processes were going to be for me. And essentially, the first thing, the goal for you is not just to get out of debt. Your goal is to gain wealth. And for me, one of the things that he was speaking on was you have to have cash. So one of the first steps was that I was only for the first 30, 60, 90 days, and I will say 60. It's 60 for me because of how my budgeting had been set up previously, because of how I get paid for my company. For the first 60 days, the only thing that I was going to be paying were those essentials that keep me living. So my rent, my lights, payments that you cannot skip, IRS, for me, school loans, those type of payments that you have to make, your cable, your phone bill, your internet bill. Those are the things that for the first 60 days, that's all I'm paying. Because what happens is that after you have your compiled list of creditors, what Mr. Battle sets up is how you're going to get out of that debt. And so for me, it's going to take about 32 months, I believe. And essentially, those first few months when I'm not paying anybody else, what I'm doing is stockpiling cash. You're given a budget, an allowance, and that allowance is based upon the numbers that you entered for your monthly activities, your eating out, your food expenditures, your clothing expenditures, your charitable giving, whether that's tithe, offering, or just giving to various charities, your personal care. All of this is budgeted into your allowance, and that allowance is split up depending on how you're paid. Now for me, I'm paid 2 times a month, the 1st and the 16th. So what happens is that all of your checks are produced by Battle & Company. And about the 25th to 28th, or I said about the 25th, you get all your checks for the month for you to sign. They're sent to you, or you go into the office to get them. You sign all your checks. And for me, the only checks that I keep, because I actually hand in, are my rent checks. So I keep my rent checks, I keep my allowance checks for the month, which are the monies that would be used for personal care, clothing, food, things like that. And then everything is sent back to Battle & Company. Because what you're doing is you're thinking of yourself as a corporation. When you think of yourself as a corporation does not send checks out. Like the president, the CEO does not send checks out. He has people to do that for him. So Mr. Battle explained is that you are a corporation. So Battle & Company acts for you. They send all your checks out. In a sense, he said you can't be bothered with it, which is kind of funny. So let me say this: the hardest thing was writing down all the creditors. When I started to see, once Mr. Battle had done my budget of what was going on and how much was going to be allocated to each thing, it made everything for me a lot easier, because I could see on paper what we had and where we were trying to go. He had warned me for about 9 to 12 months I wasn't going to like him. Now, for me, I haven't quite figured out that just yet. I could see how that would be, because if you have been used to just spending, which I do, and now someone is telling you this is your allotment, you don't need to go over this allotment, that can be difficult. For me, it's not, because my whole thing is, my goal is to gain wealth. My goal is to get out of all this debt. My goal is not to live paycheck to paycheck. My goal is to be fiscally responsible. My goal is to have a plan of action for my financial health. And it is about financial health. You have your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, and this is about my financial health. I did a lot of work on my body as far as losing weight. I lost about 60 pounds, or 50 last year. It's a total of 60 altogether in 2 years. And it took work. And Mr. Battle, you know, we had a conversation about that, and he's like, essentially, you're doing the same thing. You're dumping all this dead weight. So let me get kind of back to this. Building cash in the first 60 days for me, because I'm only paying these certain expenses that have to be paid for me to sustain. We're building cash because everything is left over that's not a part of allowance is getting banked. And what will happen is we're going to start paying off. We pay off certain chunks. So for me, one of my credit cards, which is going to be my emergency credit card, which, as Mr. Battle explained, you should always have one, so that if you get into a bind, you have an immediate way to get out. So that card is the first thing to be paid off. And then in a month, there are 2 other items that are really kind of the smaller items that will be paid off. And then we'll start my regular cycle of things. And essentially, your budget, your contract asks for certain things from you. Things to think about. Like for me, I had a water service, so Mr. Battle suggested me getting a filter because it was a $30 bill every month. Do I really need it? Another thing that once I kind of saw my budget, I got rid of my gym. Not because I'm not going to continue to work out, but the whole thing is there's a lot of things that I can do at home. I don't need to have a $40 bill. So that's $70 that's now going to be banked in savings per month. So it's available cash if something were to happen. $70 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you only had 0, it's kind of big. So that was the easy part. The more difficult part is Mr. Battle also gives you a script because, of course, when you're going through this 30 to 60 day period of not paying credit card bills and things like that, you're going to get a call. You're going to get several calls. And there is a specific script that you stick to. In fact, this script tells you to answer your phone with a smile. Once you realize it's a creditor, you flip your phone upside down, you give your script twice, and you hang up the phone. The information basically directs them to Battle & Company, their phone number, when to call. I will tell you, the first couple of days, I was like, oh my goodness. And I made mistakes. I actually was listening to them. But the whole thing is, you're not supposed to be listening to what they're saying because they can try to trap you. You know, I had one creditor say, so you're refusing to pay. And when I said it to Mr. Battle, he's like, this is why you stick to the script. This is why. You don't attempt to memorize it. You want to sound like you're reading something. And so that was the biggest thing because for me, I have so many creditors, tired of hearing from them. But one thing that I'd like to leave you with as far as financial health is that creditors want you to be on the stripper pole or on the stroll as a prostitute. They don't want you to get out this debt. So they're going to do everything they can to keep you in that debt. And for me, I decided I was getting off the pole. If I'm going to be stripping on the pole, it's for my own well-being, not to fund somebody else. I need to be funding my own future, not anybody else's. So as I go through this journey, I'm going to continue to make videos to kind of give my progress, because my whole thing is that I've given you my goals of what I want, but I also want to help the next person. One of my very, very dear friends from college is on the same path and is also working with Battle & Company. I think it's very important for young people, I'm only 33, to really pay attention to what their financial health is, because as we know, the economy is not all that great. And do you have the tools necessary, not just the money itself, but do you have the tools to make your money grow, to know how to make your money grow, to make sure that you are spending less than what you make so that there's a savings? Do you have that? Not all of us were taught that. Not all of us learned that. And sometimes it takes till you get a little older for you to learn these processes. So with that being said, I am a huge advocate for financial health along with every other health. And if you're thinking about it, Battle & Company, Denver, Colorado, you can find them. And they'll be more than willing to start assisting you with your financial endeavors. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great evening.